Good evening, everyone. My mind goes back almost 40 years back when I was in school. It was the last few days of my school life, and there was a cricket match between the two wings of the hostel. I was not a good cricketer, never was, but I was given a chance to play because it was my last few days at school. And I was dreading the time when I would go out to bat and my lack of talent woefully exposed. But then I saw my team winning. And when I got my chance to bat, I was the last batsman. There were just 2 runs to win and plenty of overs to spare. So it was the easiest of tasks to do. I was already thinking in my mind as to how I would be carried off the field like a hero celebrating with the bat in my hand. And I was thinking of this. I reached the middle. I took my stance, and I was ready to score the winning runs. But the bowler at the other end is a tall, lanky guy with curly hair, and he was just thinking to himself and adjusting the field for a long time. The fielders were actually resisting because they already had the body language of defeat. But he kept prodding them and encouraging them and adjusting the field, and he took an extraordinarily long time. And finally, when he came to bowl, he bowled at my legs, and I swung the bat and missed it completely and looked back at my stumps shattered. Instead of running back, celebrating with my bat waving in the air, I hung my head in shame and walked off. And all the fielders, they couldn't believe that this had happened. And they were celebrating and crowding around the bowler. I thought of this incident many times during the past few years. And I wondered, see, when I walked in, I had a simple task to do. But instead of focusing on the task, I was distracted by imagining the celebrations. The bowler had a very difficult task to do, but he focused on it and he stuck his mind to the task. I brought my team from a winning position to a loss. He brought his team from a losing position to a win. How did this all happen? Did you get the difference? It was all in our mind. It was in the thought process. And I want to talk today about the power of success thinking. How do you think success? See, I've been following my friends, my classmates for a long time, for the last 4 decades. And it's almost like a long-term psychological experiment. You get me? There's some psychological experiments which are just a few hours, and some are a few days, but there's some really long-term, years and decades. One such experiment was the late 60s, early 70s. It was called the marshmallow test. I think you know. Michelle and the other psychologists, they had marshmallows, treats in front of the kids. And the kids, some kids couldn't resist the temptation. Some who listened to the instructions saying, you'll get more if you wait, they waited. And they followed these kids through many years. And they found that the kids who waited, who could control their thoughts, were the ones who did better in their academics, did better in their social relationships, did even better BMI. So they were the achievers. Now, I did the same kind of experiment like all of us do, looking at all our childhood friends and seeing where they have reached. I saw 2 different extremes. On the one extreme, very sadly, were a couple of my friends who succumbed to addictions. And their whole life was a saga of depression and moving in and out of rehabilitation centers. It was not a very good story. On the other hand, there were some of them from my school who climbed such dizzying heights of success, stunned the whole world by their prowess. They did really well. This particular bowler, this tall, lanky guy with curly hair, today he became an avid reader, one who had grit and determination. He faced lots of ups and downs in his life, but he always bounced back. He always won in the long term. And he's a chronic learner, a voracious reader. He's a very engaging conversationalist. And today, He is the chairman and CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. And in his book, Hit Refresh, he writes about the lessons that he learned in the cricket field. So you got the difference, right? It's all in our mind, the power of success thinking. And I have 2 or 3 simple steps actually to talk about how we can build success thinking in ourselves. The first step is the power of thought awareness. You take a voyage into your own mind, your own brain, and examine your thoughts. Talking about voyage, in the last 2 weeks, humans have traveled the farthest ever from Mother Earth, 252,000 miles, I believe. And I'm talking about the crew of Artemis 2. And then there's a man-made space probe, actually 2 of them, Voyager 1 and 2, who have moved beyond the fringes of the solar system. And Voyager 1 is almost 16 billion miles away and still sending feeble signals. What a fascinating voyage it is. But let me tell you, the more fascinating voyage is the voyage inside your own mind, where you examine your thoughts. It's almost like magic how thoughts are formed. It's formed in your mind, in your brain, through an interplay of your sensory inputs. And by sensory inputs, I mean what you see, what you hear, what you touch, what you smell, what you taste, your sensory inputs, and then your entire memory of a lifetime stacked up, and then your emotions. These 3 dynamically interplay with each other and form millions of thoughts, and your consciousness selects one thought. And that one thought is gradually joined by other thoughts, and it becomes what we'd like to call a thought pattern. In technical ways, a neural pathway is formed with all the neurons and the synapses happening. And you have got to examine these thought patterns. And you have to ask yourself, what am I thinking? Which actually spells W-A-I-T. What am I thinking? Wait. And you've got to look at your thoughts and see, are they the helpful thoughts or are they the harmful thoughts? Are they facts or are they fears? You've got to examine your own thoughts. And then once you examine it, you've got to label it. You've got to categorize it. And you have to see this kind of thought pattern, this is where it leads. There are different kinds of categorization. For instance, the destructive patterns could be assuming too many things, over-assumption. Or it could be generalizing. What is true in one context, you take it to another context. That's over-generalization. Or the worst of them, the chaotic anxiety kind of thoughts, where you're always thinking you're in the brink of disaster. Those are all the destructive thoughts. You should be able to categorize them. And then there are those thoughts which actually empower you, and they could be the growth-oriented thoughts, or they could be the optimistic thoughts, or they could be what they call in psychology positive reframing, where you actually are surrounded by negative thoughts, but you take it, you look at it, you reframe it, and you make it something that works for you in a positive way. So in your thought awareness, you identify those thoughts, you label those thoughts, and then you understand a little deeper what triggers those thoughts. You got to find out, what's that one word that makes me lose my temper? What's that one thought or that one gesture that really makes me lose it? Or what's that one thought that instantly makes me happy? It could be a smell also, maybe of food. But you got to understand your triggers. So that's about the power of thought awareness. But that's not enough. You've also got to master your mind. You got to see that how you can discipline your thoughts. There's some thoughts which need to be restricted. When you know you're getting into that destructive or negative thought pattern, you got to do something to snap out of it. Maybe pinch yourself or punch yourself or something like that. Or you could replace it with something nice. Maybe the smell of coffee invigorates you, and you could immediately build a pattern where the negative thought is replaced by this thought. Or you could think of a beautiful hill on which you trek and you go, and that could immediately change your... But you have to discipline your thought process. And you have to discipline it by actually, noticing where the consequences lead to. But that's not all. The third thing you can do is build an unstoppable momentum. So yes, you've got the power of thought awareness, you've mastered your mind and disciplined your thoughts, but then life happens. You meet with some stresses, or you meet with something totally unexpected. You can't expect certain accidents. Or you meet with certain situations that are beyond your control. But that's where you have to keep at it. You have to be consistent. You have to tell yourself that I'll build an unstoppable momentum. It could be even on your worst moments, spend just a 5 minutes a day. I do this, I take a walk. I go out, I try to sift things out in my mind, and I try to discipline my thoughts. Or it could be that, you have a mentor. Not someone who tells you where you're not good at, but someone who helps you to play to your strengths. Or you could watch your influences. There are many influences nowadays, dime a dozen, which actually put you down. Entertainment, for instance, without any meaning, actually kind of just fizzes you out. The day goes before you realize it. But you can surround yourself with people and influences that build positive thoughts. So that is about building a momentum. So it's the power of thought awareness. It's mastering your mind by disciplining your thoughts. It's building an irrepressible momentum, an unstoppable momentum, but it doesn't end there. There's one more thing, and there's a twist towards the end of what I want to say to you. I went back to all those childhood friends, especially those who were very successful. And I'm amazed, and I say it with a lot of humility, that right now, among those groups of friends, there are 3 of them who are in the top 10 CEOs of the world. And I ask myself this question: I came from the same environment. How come they're so successful and I'm not? I was once standing with my English teacher in the school. It's a residential school, and we were standing on the balcony, and kids were streaming out of the classroom, and he said, watch how they walk. There's some who seem to have a sense of purpose, and there's some who are just drifting. They don't know where they're going. And I said, that's a bit far-fetched. You can't derive their destiny from the way they walk out of a classroom. He said, no, and he patiently explained to me. I could engage with him because he was my father. He was the English teacher whom I was standing with. And he knew them very well. He used to give me these insights. And he quoted a Time magazine columnist of that week. And he said, it's very important to have an aim and a purpose in your life, because eventually those who don't, the thoughtless people, become the prisoners of other people's thoughts. So I marked those people whom he said they had a purpose and an aim. And I said, okay, that's why they're there where they are today. They had an aim and a purpose where majority of us didn't. But that was not a satisfactory answer. I thought a little more deeper. And this is what I want to share with you, my thought experiment, what the Germans call the Gedanken experiment. I thought about them. There was something different about them, those who had achieved something in their life. They were approachable, they were humble, they were helpful, and it was almost as though their purpose was not just about themselves. And then it struck me, yes, that is what is important. Your life does not consist of I, me, myself. It does not consist on, amassing a whole lot of wealth. That's not a good enough purpose. Or, having a whole set of material things and thinking you've made it. Or having power, having control over people. That's not what a good aim or a good purpose is all about. It's always beyond you. And you look at the people who've built institutions, they're right here, and built organizations. They always had a vision and a value that was beyond themselves. And I found it unmistakably in these successful people. And so what I want to tell you this evening is very simple. Yes, practice the power of success thinking by identifying your thoughts, the thought patterns. Master your mind by disciplining your thoughts, build an unstoppable momentum, but more important than all these 3, ask yourself, have values that are beyond yourself. Think about others. That is a life worth living. And that's the success that is more sweeter to attain. And I wish you would practice this and be successful thinkers with the right values. All the best. Thank you.